everybody? It's JT Sports Match, you guys, with another video. This video, I'm here with my Cincinnati Bengals 2019 training camp preview. Going to be giving you guys a little bit of a preview and an overview and things to watch, players to watch for the Cincinnati Bengals when their training camp starts. So before I begin, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Upload NFL videos, NFL content daily. So the Cincinnati Bengals, new head coach Zach Taylor. The offseason was going pretty well until they lost Jonah Williams, and he's out for the season. So now they got to find out who's going to replace him. And that offensive line was a little bit of a question going into this season. And now they lost Jonah Williams, who was supposed to be one of the starters on that offensive line. So now during training camp, it's going to be interesting to figure out who's going to end up replacing him. So other than the offensive line, before I really dive into that, I want to talk about the second quarterback position, the backup quarterback spot. I think that is an interesting position battle that fans and Cincinnati Bengals fans should look out for during the Cincinnati Bengals training camp. You got Ryan Finley, who they drafted in this year's draft out of NC State. And you had Jeff Driscoll, who started in a few games last season. I thought Jeff Driscoll was pretty solid, if you can forget about all the times he was fumbling the football. Other than the fumbles, Jeff Driscoll, in my opinion, was pretty solid. So a lot of Cincinnati Bengals fans are just automatically giving the second quarterback spot to Ryan Finley. A lot of Cincinnati Bengals fans have been asking me about Ryan Finley and could Ryan Finley end up replacing Andy Dalton. And I always tell people, I always want to say, I don't necessarily think Ryan Finley is going to automatically be the guy. I think that he's going to have to work a little bit for it and training camp in the off season, because I don't think Jeff Driscoll is a quarterback who can really be slept on, considering the fact that he appeared in a couple of NFL games last year, so he has experience under his belt. He also has mobility, more mobility than Ryan Finley, and he also has experience, like I mentioned also. So other than the fumbles, I thought Jeff Driscoll was pretty solid. He wasn't nothing amazing, but when we look at him being a backup quarterback, I thought he did a pretty solid job. So I just think that this is going to be a quarterback battle. I think Ryan Finley and Jeff Driscoll have the potential to be two solid backup quarterbacks behind Andy Dalton. And if they do decide to move on from Andy Dalton, it's going to be interesting to see which one of those guys can take over. Now, obviously, these guys have their strengths and weaknesses. Jeff Driscoll, he's a little bit loose with the football, tends to turn the football over a lot. Fumbled the ball a lot last season. Ryan Finley, on the other hand, he's conservative. He doesn't really turn the ball over, doesn't really make a lot of mistakes. He's like a less athletic version of Alex Smith, and that's what a lot of people have been comparing him to, and I agree. That's comparison I have for him, the less athletic version of Alex Smith. Then we look at Jeff Driscoll. He has experience. Ryan Finley is a rookie, and I think experience means a lot in the NFL, because you just don't want to go into the. You always want to have a little bit of. You always want to have a little bit of experience under your belt. You don't always want to get thrown into the fire and act like a deer in headlights. So I think Jeff Driscoll beats him in that department just because he started a few games. Jeff Driscoll also has better mobility than what Ryan Finley has. Ryan Finley isn't really that much of a runner. Not really the most athletic guy. He's not going to make anybody miss extending plays in the pocket. So Jeff Driscoll hasn't been in that department, but Ryan Finley is a lot more accurate than Jeff Driscoll, and he throws a pretty nice ball as well. So both of these quarterbacks have their strengths and their weaknesses. I think the backup quarterback spot is something that's always overlooked going into training camp, because look, you always want to be prepared just in case your starting quarterback goes down for injury. That's why I think looking at the backup quarterback spot is always a big thing of mine when we go into training camp, because injuries can happen. So you always want to know who are the guys who you have next in line to replace your starting quarterback in case he goes down and miss a few games during the season. So I think the backup quarterback spot is going to be something to look for the Cincinnati Bengals during their training camp. Next up, their halfback position. Now, I'm not concerned about guys like Joe Mixon and stuff like that. I'm concerned about the other halfbacks who they have behind those guys who are question marks to make the roster. Guy like Travion Williams out of Texas A&M, very, very good halfback. Rodney Anderson out of Oklahoma. That dude is a physical freak. Darren Hall and Quentin Flowers, who was on the roster last season. He got moved up from the practice squad, former USF quarterback converted into a halfback. So Trayvon Williams, I know for a fact that he most definitely should make the roster. He brings them a lot. He was very, very good for Texas A&M last season. Rodney Anderson, Darren Hall, Quentin Flowers are the rest of the guys who I have question marks about. Rodney Anderson is a huge physical halfback. He has extraordinary size, great speed, and he reminds me a lot of Derek McFadden. And if he never got injured, he's injury riddled. He's a first round talented halfback, but injuries just derailed him during his time at Oklahoma. It seems like he was getting injured every single season for Oklahoma. So injuries is what derailed him. If he was able to stay healthy, he would have been a first round pick. So Rodney Anderson, he's a guy who I'm going to be looking forward to seeing if he can make the roster or not, because he has a lot of talent. When I mean a lot of talented, this dude is really talented. He runs very good routes for a halfback. He can catch passes out the backfield. He can line up and catch passes out wide. He's also a very good halfback, can make people miss in the open field. And once this guy gets a little bit of space, he's pretty much a bet to score. So Rodney Anderson is a guy who I'm really interested in seeing. I really, really admired his game when he was able to stay healthy at Oklahoma. Then we have Darren Hall and Quentin Flowers. Don't really know that much about Darren Hall. Quentin Flowers last season, he made the practice squad and got moved up to the main roster later on in the season. So it's going to be interesting to see if he can end up making the roster again for the Cincinnati Bengals. So the halfback position is really, really interesting. Next up, we have the offensive line. Who's going to replace Jonah Williams? So the offensive line is a little bit of a question mark. I think if this offensive line can be solid, then I think the Cincinnati Bengals team has a very good chance of making it to the playoffs. And who's going to be that guy to replace Jonah Williams? So training camp is going to give us the answers to that. Then on the defensive side of the ball, my biggest question is the linebacker position, because out of all the linebackers in the NFL, all the linebacker units in the NFL, the Cincinnati Bengals had to be the absolute worst. Their linebackers were god awful. The Pro Football Focus grades for the linebackers are not good. One had a grade in the 50s. The other two had 270 grades and were graded out as some of the worst linebackers in the NFL. So it's going to be interesting to see who's going to end up starting at those linebacker positions, or are they going to have the same guys? It's going to be really, really interesting, because that linebacker position really, really held back the Cincinnati Bengals defense last season. If their linebacking core can be at least solid, or at least a tad bit better than what they were last season, I think the Cincinnati Bengals defense could be really, really good this season. So training camp going to be really interesting seeing who's going to end up taking reps there. Then lastly, I'm going to give my players to watch. I had Trayvon Williams, like I said, very, very phenomenal halfback for Texas A&M. I think the Cincinnati Bengals got an absolute steal when they were able to get Travion Williamson or Trayon Williams. Then you got Rodney Anderson, already mentioned him, physical halfback, good size, great speed, great athleticism. The only question is, can he stay healthy? Because if he's able to stay healthy, I think he reminds me a lot of Derek McFadden. And I think a lot of Cincinnati Bengals fans are going to see that when training camp rolls around and we start seeing a lot of these clips. And when the preseason rolls around, we start to see a little bit more of Rodney Anderson, because a lot of Cincinnati Bengals fans are going to see the talent that I'm talking about with Rodney Anderson. This dude reminds me exactly of Derek McFadden. Then we have John Ross. A lot of things, a lot of questions, a lot of concerns about John Ross. This might be his last chance to impress. I think if he does get released or get traded, I think he is going to get another chance. If it doesn't work out for the Cincinnati Bengals, because he does have a lot of skills. He's very fast, very quick, good athleticism, good in open space, and in that Zach Taylor offense, it's going to be interesting to figure out ways that he gets the ball. But I'm not really expecting a lot of John Ross this season. The simple fact is because when Sean McVay became the head coach of the LA Rams a few seasons ago, everybody was like, oh, he's going to find ways to get Tavon Austin the ball and things like that. And it didn't really work out. So he's a guy that I'm really looking forward to seeing in training camp. And also Sam Hubbard. Sam Hubbard is really, really slept him. I think Sam Hubbard is going to be in for a very good year this season. I think he can end up surprising a lot of people, and I think his production might be off the charts this year. I think he can end up, if he gets the playing time, he can end up having 8.5 sacks, maybe 9.5 sacks, because I really like what I've been seeing out of Sam Hubbard last season. So Though these are my guys to watch going into the Cincinnati Bengals training camp, and this is my Cincinnati Bengals training camp for 2019. Let me know some of your questions about the Cincinnati Bengals, some things you guys want to be monitoring and looking out for during training camp for the Bengals. Also, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more NFL videos and content. And thanks for watching.